Raving under the cacophonous madness of these bleeding stars, we are the eye-watering cyan colors siphoning off the last bastions of sanity, live here on the Pirate Voxwave, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. For once, I was able to drag the Archeo Savant Chac out of the sump and up here to Bulge's Sumprack City.
Sounds like the mid-hives are getting a taste of underhive life, as the Corridor 54 killer has claimed 4 new victims in the Vardenhest Hab blocks, leaving his newest victims headless, skinless, and displayed in one of those fancy parks they get to experience above the cloud cover. This marks the first time the Corridor 54 killer has claimed victims outside the Underhive.
Maybe this is just the kick the Administratum Marshals need to actually investigate. Basking in the soothing and loving glow of unstable blue plasma, I am your host, Goblin King, joined today by my co-host, the Electro-Death Scream Queen of Necrofrost, Emmy.
Hello.
I've named your band.
Necrofrost?
Yep, you're welcome.
Oh my god. I am going to go get lost in the woods and find
and
some
drop
like
some sticks.
Get some gangly, like long-haired Finnish dudes to like stand in, and we're gonna be the hottest, newest Finnish folk metal band.
There you go.
Necrofrost. I can't do death metal vocals.
And our very own Skola Magus being introduced to the loud world of Electro-Death for the first time, the rogue Archeo Savant Chac.
Hey, all you guys, it's good to be dragged up from trying to figure out that damn trap down on sump level 53.
Now I have to figure out why sump level 53 is trapped.
Well, we went down that corridor and we came to the vault door.
Right.
We
We got to get into
through
the
it.
vault. We always have to. The vaults are peak.
Still looking for that STC. Down there someplace.
Welcome to Under the Hive of Madness, episode 108, World Building Artifacts and Legendary Creatures. Before we jump into the show itself, however, I wanted to let you guys know that you can see our beautiful faces and look at all of the images that we bring up while we talk things through, be it art, pictures of models, or just other random stuff we find on the internet. You can get this experience by joining us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. I swear we won't use any of the power that you guys give us to fuel our own designs into hunting down cryptids. Again, that's a lie. We will. Just like Emmy will buy a raccoon, we will 100% use Patreon money to fund a search for Chupacabra.
Squatching.
Yeah. We're going squatching.
Absolutely. You and
I love
me,
it.
we're all going into the Appalachians and we are going squatching.
And when we hear things specifically call our name,
So I dated the wife of a professional
squatcher.
Bigfoot hunter. Don't judge. She was still married at the time.
I figured that happened after.
No.
Oh, during.
During. But also, I've been approached several times by people talking about Sasquatch encounters in my county. So there is that too.
Have you had any Sasquatch encounters?
I have not, but I've had more than one person come up and ask me what I carry when I go hiking. And I'm like, I don't usually carry anything. That's fine. And he's like, because a 9mm is not going to do it when you come across a Sasquatch. You need something bigger. And I'm like, excuse me? And then I've heard these things about like people like Bigfoot throwing stones at people canoeing down the river, the big river in our county.
Wow.
So
Wow.
who knows?
Yeah, we're going to like West Virginia. I think that's like prime Squatch land.
No, that's not deer land.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to have a lot of experiences of hearing crying babies and people calling our name. And then like, depending on the group we take, certain people will wander off to go after it. And then, as the semi-sensible Native American person, half Native American person, I'll be like, we're not supposed to walk after the things calling our name in the middle of the forest.
I've got it. You don't have to agree to this now, but just think about this.
Okay.
I think for a higher tier on Patreon, like above the $3, $6, or $9, maybe you could do a drawing at like the $6 or $9 levels, but it guarantees your spot on a UHM cryptid camping trip that we can do in like rural southeastern Ohio every year. Uh, you
So if you
know,
join us for $20 on Patreon, you can be our willing sacrifice when things start calling our name.
I think we have the budget for some Cliff Bars. Maybe maybe the name brand, otherwise it's going to have to be the great value stuff. Like
Oh
I
God.
can't promise it's going to be great accommodations, but the stories, you
The
guys.
story.
All I can say is that if I join you guys in Appalachia, I will definitely be carrying, because
Okay.
I've seen those movies.
I will
I'm
be
glad you'll
bringing
be.
my samurai swords.
I was gonna say I'm glad you'll be carrying because I get like really tired after like a mile or two, and it'll be nice to. That's not what you mean, is it?
No.
All
As
right.
like the weeb, I'll bring some katanas. It'll be really fun.
There you go. So, as we dive into this episode on world building, just as a quick refresher, my background is in art history and illustration. And for the last 30 years or so, I've been working off and on as a creative writer and freelance illustrator. I've also been working on my fantasy setting for about 20 years and my science fiction setting for about 25. My science fiction setting is a little bit more geared towards the actual novelization, though, rather than the full development of a campaign world that I jumped into with my fantasy world. Most of my writing dates back to high school and college, but I didn't get into world building and game design until I took a course on video game design in college. In college, there was a set of coursework that was specifically based around studying the design for like worlds in video games, and it was actually taught by Ed Magnum, who is one of the lead programmers, or was one of the lead programmers, I guess I should say, on the original Prince of Persia. So we're talking about
Ooh.
like when it was black and white and it was a side scroller only. Like he worked on some of the games that 100%, whenever you see that Know Your Roots t-shirt, Ed worked on a lot of those, that style games. Ever since then, I've become more focused on the campaign and TTRPG side of story development. As part of the process, I became fascinated with looking at different periods of history, digging into them, and seeing how they shaped modern religion, modern culture, and modern spiritualism. I like to deconstruct myths, legends, and religious based histories or allegories, stuff like where the gods came from, who the gods are, and all of the stuff that goes into creation myths and creation legends. While both of you guys have been frequent guests and co hosts on the podcast, this is the first time I've ever had you on a world building and creative writing episode. So, starting with Emmy, can you fill us in a little bit on your background and your experience specifically in gaming, a little bit wider than just 40K and Warhammer Age of Sigmar?
Okay. So I'm Emmy, and I do have an undergraduate degree in paleontology. It's a little bit on the hard side of science things. All global tectonics and all that good stuff. Um, but as for my sub niche interests in paleontology, I worked a lot on like my undergraduate thesis paper was on the alverosaurids of South America. They're the little guys that barely have any front arms. They're just like one single claw on each side, and they are just little termite eating guys. There's none of them from South Africa. They're from
Oh, South
South
America.
America and Mongolia. Yup. South America and Mongolia primarily are where they're from. Like Mononychus, he's really cute. Um, that's probably my favorite dinosaur. Otherwise, I did some research on Foraminifera, which is a lot less sexy. That's a lot of single cellular organism sedimentary deposits. And as for my gaming, I mean, of course, I play Seraphon in Age of Sigmar. Of course, I play Lizardmen in, you know, in the fantasy settings of Warhammer. Yeah, look how adorable he is. Isn't that adorable?
So you specifically studied dinosaurs in South America, and then you decided to play the Seraphon and lizard folk. That doesn't. I don't understand how those are connected.
Okay, well, I just kind of blue screened there for a moment. But as for like my gaming background, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with this janky mid early aughts MMO called Guild Wars. And of course, being the edgy kid I had to be the necromancer class. And then that got into Magic the Gathering, playing a lot of black because, of course, angst and swamps go together. Yes, that was me on the far left, the like goth girl in the corpse paint.
There you go.
Yeah, with the skull. Yeah, that's exactly what 14-year-old me thought was the coolest thing in the entire world. And as for like world building, I'm now play testing and I'm part of the play testing team of the new game coming to Kickstarter, X Seekers of Fortune. It's all based on kind of this fantasy world of myth with semi-intelligent helper monkeys based on adventure serials. You're an archaeologist, you have to thwart your rival, and you and your hyper-intelligent monkey friend do a series of kind of raiding your rival's dig site and going on epic adventures and doing epic feats to complete your quests. So, yes, that's the game. The prototypes are coming in soon, and I am so excited to take something that's gone through so many iterations and have those physical game assets. Like, so excited for that.
It's pretty fun that you said you've got a little monkey backup guy. There was an end of the world like 3D print set that was released within the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And the trailer shows specifically a monkey, like a Reese's or like a Reese monkey. Reese's monkey or Reese monkey?
There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. I don't know.
What are they? Reese's monkeys or are they Reese monkeys, Chuck?
They're Reese's monkeys.
Reese's. Okay. So it's a Reese's monkey with like a giant fucking revolver and just the most maniacal look on his face. And I'm like, I want to buy this entire set just for that guy. And then I found out that he was part of somebody's base. And I'm like, no, he needs to be his own character. I need a diabolical monkey with a hand cannon. Why is this not universe? I've put it out there. Please deliver.
The name? What is the name of like the super intelligent planet of the ape race in Warhammer?
Jakaro.
The Jakaro.
The Jakaro. Those guys are so cool.
Yeah, I think they're orangutan based, but yeah.
Yes, they are orangutan based. Yes.
And they actually have a mini. They have one mini.
Just one.
Just one.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, you're part of an Inquisitor's warband.
They really need to give us more of the Jakaro.
They're not really sentient.
They're not?
They just do things. They've got spaceships, they can invent things, but they're not like, they're described as you can't like, they like do stuff more instinctual. They're weird. I think it's basically lazy writing, and
Yeah, I was gonna say it's an example of lazy writing.
They just didn't give the Jokero. They've got starships. They invent all this stuff. Yeah, there it is. But
and they miniaturize technology. They're really good at miniaturizing technology.
But they don't really, like, you don't talk to them.
Interesting.
The way that I remember them being presented, and this was this may have been when some of their lore was being spiced up or fixed a little bit, is that they're not necessarily. It's less that they're not intelligent and more that they are specifically like isolationist and non-communicative. But the Jakaro lore is not very fleshed out, and we can definitely look a little bit more into them in the future in a Xenos Minor episode. But they're neat. They're definitely one of those things that like needs, whether or not we dig into them or somebody else digs it. Yeah, they definitely need more because it's a really neat concept. But yeah, so Chalk,
Yes.
now it's your turn. Let's find out about your background, and can you tell us how to tell whether or not it's a piece of sandstone or a
Yes.
human
All
bone?
right. So
Oh,
I'm an archaeologist. I have an advanced degree in archaeology. I focus on the Maya world. Since Emmy gave the title of her undergraduate, I can give you my thesis title, which nobody will understand. I had to actually look it up because I didn't remember it. Hinterland communities and hierarchies of power in the Three Rivers region of the Maya lowlands. And yes, I grew up imagining that I would be Indiana Jones. Literally, I know he's a looter. Don't get on me. I still like him. There are a
This
lot of
belongs in a museum.
archaeologists of my generation that still see Indiana Jones as the inspiration for getting them into the field of study. And yes, we do recognize he's a looter. So just like let that go. What Ryan was talking about is, and this goes the same for probably for paleontologists, is the way that we could tell if something is a little limestone chip or if it's a piece of bone is that limestone doesn't stick to your tongue and bone does because it's
same with
porous.
dinosaur bone.
Yeah, same with dinosaur
Permineralized
bone.
or not, it's the same
Yeah,
principle.
none of the bone that I licked was mineralized. It was
I just
all
wanted you
way
to
too
talk about
recent for
licking
that.
bones. I just needed to be very immature for a couple of
Yes.
minutes.
Oh, we do it all the time.
But so I spent most of my time in working in Belize and in the Maya lowlands.
Mhm.
And if you want, and I'll give you the archaeology joke, basically because I just came back from England, and so that is, do you know why the pyramids are in Egypt?
Because the British Museum couldn't fit them into
Yeah,
transport.
because they don't fit in the British Museum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So a typical thing, look up, put up on the screen, Stella 4 from Yash Chalan. And if you can spell Yash Chalan.
No.
Yaxchilan.
LAA?
LAN. There you go. These were in the British Museum. Not the do the like the fourth one in on the top. Yeah, that's the famous one, which was actually being conserved. Of course, it should be in Mexico, but it was being conserved. But they had some of the four most famous pieces of Maya art sitting there in the British Museum, and I did get to see them for the first time. And people kept on setting off the alarms because they weren't behind glass, but they had laser beams across them or something. People kept on setting them off because they go into touch.
They're getting too close.
Yeah, sort of pissed me off. You'd hear the alarms go off all the time. But so as far as gaming goes, non 40K gaming and 40K gaming, I started off playing Dungeons and Dragons before it was AD&D, and then I was on the first volume of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So I broke my leg in 5th grade, I think, so I couldn't do like sports stuff. Yeah, that one. And so I got in, but I also see the little, okay, on the road down below, move your cursor down, move the hand down. Oops. Let's see.
Sorry, I was just trying to find it better.
Go back one. The one over. That one. That's what I started on.
The white box.
Way back.
So yeah, so back in the day, a lot of like dungeon manuals and I'm sorry, Chuck, but a lot of like D&D manuals and stuff, you would go to like
a convention.
A convention or like a game store, and they would be Xerox copied in like plastic bags.
Wow.
I had all of those three.
Wow.
Way back. Other role-playing games I've played is everything from I like the World of Darkness. I specifically liked Mage, and I liked, if you know anything about the World of Darkness, they've got a bunch of different types of mages, and I liked I can't remember. They were the weird science guys. And
yeah,
so
the tech school,
not the evil tech, but these were like, they believed in the
tech,
ether, and they had rocket packs, and it was basically 1930s pulp mad scientists that were actually mages.
Ooh. I love that.
So it was a great aesthetic. Of course, you had the vampires, and you had the death mages, and you had all the different clans of vampires, the Lasombra and the Carnelian or whatever it was, and you had werewolves, and then they got into ghosts, and they had a whole bunch, and I think it's been redone multiple times.
Oh yeah, they're in. I can't remember what edition they are in. This is the oldest source book I own. This is the Chivalry and Sorcery source book.
Yep.
And apparently, I have lost the cover page, but this was one of those. Like, there's the first page of the index. It literally just printed off on, somebody ran it on probably a dot matrix printer.
Yeah.
And then put it into a bag, and I bought it. And I mean, this talking about games that have too many rules. Chivalry and Sorcery has rules for like getting drunk on a horse.
Yeah, it's just wild,
A little ridiculous.
But then one of my favorite ones was all the games that came out from Palladium, which you like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Rifts. They had some really interesting horror games.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love the Rifts books there, but they had these supernatural games that were pretty much dark horror. God, I can't remember the names.
We talked about Rifts last episode too.
You did?
Yeah, a little bit. I was letting Emmy know that like how Rifts worked. I feel like Rifts would be a good side quest because Rifts is some really interesting deep lore.
If you want to play a god, that's the game for you, because that's actually a game class, or that's a racial class.
Racial character class.
A racial character class. You can be a god. You can be, or things as powerful as gods that aren't gods. And the artwork is just wonderful.
That thing in the background, Emmy, with all the tentacles coming out of its back that looks kind of like a alligator man.
Huh.
Those are the bad things that like control everything.
Those are the bad things. And they've got the blind slave warrior women that protect them.
Yeah.
Okay,
very
this is a whole
clad
side quest. Is you guys explaining the world of Rifts to me?
Well, it's
a
multiverse, so it's not one world.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were talking about it in connection to magic because you were kind of getting into like the planes and magic, and I was like,
yes.
oh, that's like phase shift from Rifts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've also done a lot of traditional war games. What I really like when we're talking about world building, and I've tried to write fiction. I can write really well nonfiction. My problem with fiction, I just can't get more than a couple of pages in. But I could be a GM, game master or dungeon master or whatever, and build the worlds around certain settings, and I really enjoyed that. Beyond the Supernatural. That was one of the great ones. And I tended to build them around things like Call of Cthulhu, horror, and toss in with the archaeology and all. I liked having reasons. I didn't like things that just devolved into random find the MacGuffin of the week type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, what I would really like to see, and if it could be put together, like people do campaigns in tabletop games like 40K and all, but the campaigns usually just end up being ramped up power levels.
Yes.
You start with 300 points, and you do 500, or 500 points, and then you do 750, then you do 1,000 and 1,500 and 2,000.
Like
hey, you're playing a regular
campaign.
Game. But they don't have a reason.
Right.
They don't have a connecting story. It's not like you aren't playing a Death Watch team that's going to expand, and they're trying to shut down or retrieve. Like, the way that I would like to see a campaign run is that you start off with an inquisitorial team, and that's at the lowest number of points. And then you have your opponent that's playing the bad guys, Eldar or whoever. And that's your 500 points. But you build as the campaign goes, it's like, then the Inquisitor needs a kill team. And that's the next level up. And the kill team isn't working. So instead of the kill team, he has to recruit his local Dark Angels chapter. And you're still
combat patrol.
Yeah, you're still ramping the power levels, but you're ramping them along a storyline.
I think a lot of that came from the COVID into post-COVID push, the explosion in popularity of Warhammer 40K on the tabletop has really been driven by a new investment into matched play, into
Yeah.
tournaments. And
Mhm.
I think even as they've been releasing Crusade stuff and as they've been releasing some of the older stuff like Kill Team and stuff like that, there's a very democratized the playing field needs to be level and everything needs to be tournament ready, even if you're not playing in a tournament.
Yeah.
And the
Mhm.
local, the truth is the solve to that is part of the reason that we do the world building episodes. And the solve to that is the reason that we talk about story and collaborative storytelling is because we locally need to reinvigorate the hobby with those more robust stories. It's things like Mark had run a couple where he just endlessly spawned zombies or he endlessly spawned orcs and the guys had to deal with it, that the players at the table had to deal with it. It's games that don't necessarily, when you're trying to design a story or a narrative, you're gonna find yourself in a position eventually where the sides aren't going to be equal. And
Mhm.
a lot of the way that the Games Workshop stuff is designed is to always be equal. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. It's not my favorite either.
So
I
what I
get why
don't
it's
like about
happening.
the way Games Workshop has ended up now is that okay, the majority of the codexes are fluff, but
Mhm.
nobody actually cares about the fluff.
Yeah,
All you need is the rules. Now, it could go the other way, like how one page rules is, or whatever, where they have the rules and you can
make your
toss
own
any
fluff.
lore that you want if you want to play it. So people like, they sort of like reading the lore because it sort of gives a little bit to the army that they're building. But a lot of the people don't build the army because they like. You have two people. You have two sides. You have got the people that actually really like the army, but more and more, it's just like people build to the meta, and they don't
Yep.
care what the fluff is. They just care what the army is. Build to the meta. They don't care about the story
Yeah.
behind it.
I
And so why
Mhm.
think
not just play a regular
I
war game?
think a
Yeah.
lot of people, yeah. I think a lot of people's introduction to the world of Warhammer and the game of Warhammer comes from a this looked really cool, so I bought it.
Yeah.
And then they find out that there's a deeper game there. And then because that was my cycle. My cycle was I bought the things that looked really cool, and then the things that looked really cool didn't do that well in the tournament in the gaming scene. So I
Mhm.
changed the army I played and I got into, a couple years, 2, 3 years of really heavy meta play. And then I kind of graduated out of that back into just collecting the things that I want. And I think part of what's happening now in the cycle of the game is COVID. Warhammer was very COVID friendly because Warhammer
Mhm.
40K, especially Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40K, especially if you're going to play it at the game store, you're going to play it competitively. There's a cultural reason, I guess, a cultural trapping, however you want to kind of put it down. Culturally speaking, it is acceptable to have an assembled and painted or some variation of assembled and on its way to being painted
Yes.
army when you play. And I think that a lot of people came into the hobby, needing something that was downtime, needing something and deciding they really liked it. The catharsis of painting and all of that is definitely a real thing. And then they're done painting and now they're kind of hitting that like 2 to 3 year period where they're going, well, I really liked the way that just because the picture that's brought up here, I really liked the way the Blood Angels looked. So I built a Blood Angel Space Marine army, and Blood Angels aren't doing well in meta.
Mhm.
So what do I shift to that's doing well in meta? Um, and then that leads to like, okay, like currently Eldar and Tau are doing really well. So there's a lot of people kind of moving to Eldar and Tau. And I think
Mhm.
after a certain point, you kind of get done chasing it and you get back into the lore. But and maybe that's just part of what we're facing. The other thing that could be is, back when I started playing, which was in the late 90s or the early 90s, there really wasn't tournament. anything that was considered tournament before 2016, 2017, there was no Games Workshop tournament schedule. There were events that Games Workshop supported, and then there was the WTC, there was the ITC, there were a bunch of different organizations that did tournaments, but the company wasn't matched play was not something that really existed company wide yet. It's really an 8th, 9th, and 10th edition thing. But anyway, I get where you're coming from. Hopefully, with the world building episodes, we're starting, we're helping people.
Of course, my conspiracy is that match play, nerfing armies, and releasing the new hotness is all part of the strategy to get switch armies and buy new minis.
It's to continue the buying cycle, and I think
that's better.
We're back. Okay,
how's this?
So you were saying that everyone's kind of gotten sucked up into this like a fear of missing out cycle on like always buying the next new thing.
Right. Whereas I'm more of a hobby guy and I like the story. But what I was saying is, GW keeps advancing the story, but I don't know that it really matters for the majority of people.
They're not. I mean, they're advancing the story faster than they were, because for like 20 years, the 13th Black Crusade was happening.
They didn't advance it at all.
Yeah, but I think that some of it is like, I think they advanced the story and then they left it. And I think some of that's good for the game because it allows people to tell their own stories. But yeah.
Well, it's like, oh, this Primarch's back. Now we have a model.
Right.
Oh, guys, the lion.
That's why they're advancing the story now. They have to push the story forward so they can bring
because every time they release one, back. There's a significant bump in interest. And it's a larger game now. And, one of the side effects of success is there are more eyes looking at you have investors, you've got a board, you've got people that are expecting deliverables, and hopefully this is just a growing pain and everything will.
Yeah, hopefully we don't get another Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. It was the one that was like, we sold the card game, but how are we ordered all of these action figures on motorcycles.
Wow.
We're going to write a whole spin-off anime where they're on motorcycles playing Yu-Gi-Oh! We got to sell these toys. Like, if it turns into that, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. But, world building for me is important. And I think that's why, and I have a certain way of looking at game worlds. Everybody does, because they live inside your head. For example, in the 40K universe, I don't care about Space Marines.
Good guys.
I think they're boring. I like the small stories. I like the Inquisitors. I'm not a guard person either. I like the rogue traders. I like the Inquisitors. I like bringing it down from the big battles to the small conflicts.
I definitely agree. So to get a little bit deeper into the world building side that you're talking about, Chac, when designing both artifacts and creatures, it's common to figure out how they serve the story or game in the moment. For example, in a TTRPG, say you were doing something in the 40K universe, you may have a player that's trying to get an item that provides some sort of specific boost, whether or not that's a boost that they plan on carrying forward or whether or not a boost they need in the moment. You're going to essentially try to solve that problem at the time it comes up. And we see this often also reflected in the video game industry as well, especially in games that have any sort of crafting system. And because of these sorts of, the player has run into an issue, the player needs something to overcome the issue, lots of TTRPG rule sets and video games have a lot of like random item or random artifact creation rules, things that are tables in the source books from Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder to Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing or Dark Heresy for 40K. All of this stuff is just how to solve the problem immediately. And we even see it when we move into skirmish games, more like Mordenheim and Necromunda. Between matches, as you're looking at your warband and you're looking at how they interact with each other, same thing happens. You've got these random tables that kind of let you know what you've discovered and what you can kind of make. And of course, because you're taking it from a skirmish, you're taking it up, You can even apply some of this stuff to the way that the Crusade rules are written for campaigning. Chac had just brought all this stuff up. There are certain relics that you can bring into your Crusade force as your Crusade force grows. But again, these relics are being either pulled from a pre-existing list or they're exceptionally generic. It's like the Crown of Suffering. Okay, well, what's the Crown of Suffering? What's the Crown of Suffering's link to this world that they're fighting on? Well, there is no link because it was just a generic relic out of the relic list in the book. However, artifacts that are created this way lack that connection to the world. They're bound by the needs of the system or the needs of the character and story. To take a second and give you an example, let's look at my favorite punching bag of a setting. The time turner in Harry Potter only serves as a way to hand wave the needs of the character in that specific moment. Its greater impact is never explored, and we aren't given any good contextual information for why it even exists. The time turner literally exists because Hermione needs to do something with the time turner at the end of the book. Even the reason that the book gives for the reason that she has the time turner is complete bullshit. She has the time turner so she can take 2 more extra classes a day.
Well, I mean, she is like the super nerd, I guess, but it's just kind of like, okay, but it here's the reveal.
She had the time turner. Right. They could have
the time turner could have
finished everything with it. It's incredibly
this massively powerful thing. And as we've had the Harry Potter characters established to us, they just fucking do whatever they want. So they could have used it to do anything, well, honestly, and they didn't. You know,
I might get a lot of hate from this, but the Harry Potter world is incredibly lazy.
I don't think you're going to get any hate for that.
There is no rhyme or reason behind the magic system, behind anything. It's just we need something right here. It is literally the MacGuffin of the week is how she wrote it, and nothing holds together.
When I've talked about world building in the past, I have 2 ends of the spectrum. I have the Tolkien end of the spectrum, which is world building masterclass. Everything that Tolkien did was specifically designed to make the world function, and then he put characters in it, and the world continues to operate regardless of those characters' influence, with the exception of the Fellowship and what the Fellowship goes through. But in general, in even the Fellowship, up until those defining moments, that up until the end, realistically, the entire world continues to function and move around them. On the opposite side of that spectrum is Harry Potter, which is literally like, oh, I've written myself into a corner. I need to come up with some bullshit that gets me out of the corner. The other thing that's on that side of the spectrum is midichlorians from the prequel series.
Midichlorians from the freaking Phantom Menace.
Harry Potter is my punching bag in world building episodes. I pull it apart a lot. And it's not, there's a reason for that type of storytelling, and it's what Chac identified in his "What Really Grinds My Gears About Harry Potter" statement. Harry Potter is not a story about the world functioning. Harry Potter is a story about the characters progressing through it, and because of that, it's lazy, and it's not bad. The thing that makes it bad is that there's 7 of them, and the later books don't justify or make sense with the earlier books. If it was a 3-book series or even a 1-book series, it wouldn't matter if you come up with a magical MacGuffin or a magical Deus Ex Machina every time you needed to solve a problem, because then you're out of it. There is no, but now we have prequel movies. They're talking about sequel movie. Like, okay, well, you introduced Magic Hitler
right
in the prequels, and we're supposed to think that Magic Hitler is worse than Voldemort, although Voldemort was worse than but then what was the impact of Magic? How did Magic Hitler, who very openly acted in the Muggle world, not get the entire Muggle world in the obvious World War II setting that you put it in, to realize there was this entire world and we have this giant war machine that can now just be shifted to eradicating all of the weird magic finger wigglers? Like, there's no reason. We're supposed to take too much on faith.
In book 7.
Yes.
It's like, okay, we have to destroy Magic Hitler. We have to destroy Voldemort, and we have to get all the Horcruxes together. There is not enough at stake to like take the kids out of the school environment. And it's like, why are we deviating from the formula? why are we now like in a sleeping bag in the woods? Make that make sense. I will pause it because I have to reference a shonen anime once every episode. And if it's not Naruto, it's gonna be something else. I will posit that the most recent season of My Hero Academia, it's about kids with superpowers who go to a high school. So it's basically Harry Potter, except that they are like anime superhero kids, right? But that's the thing is all for one, he's like the big bad. He has big God Emperor of Mankind on the corpse throne
Energy.
vibes.
Okay.
Yeah. He's sort of the main bad guy of this anime. And the scope of it and the reason why the green kid in the middle there, he's the protagonist. He has to drop out of high school to literally go save the world and not just, oh no, the bad snake man's coming for Harry Potter. Now we got to go camp about it. It's like, you
Yeah.
know, I'm leaving my classmates to play trading cards and chess, but me, I have to drop out of school and literally go save the planet from the worst threat it's ever known. And
Right.
I will posit that My Hero Academia did what Harry Potter was afraid to do.
Yeah. And yeah.
Okay. Well, let me give you a different example, but I will
Okay.
use shonen
Okay,
to
great.
go with it. So, and I will
I have
also
no idea what's going
reference
on.
Supernatural.
Like the show
Shonen just
Supernatural?
means anime for boys, right?
it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, okay. Supernatural, the TV show, the two hot guys
Mhm.
fighting monsters, was supposed to
Yep.
run for
Mhm.
5 seasons. Planned for 5 seasons. The first 5 seasons
Why everybody
are very
died.
good.
And then they had to cut, yeah.
Yes. And it got very popular. And they're like, oh my God, we have to keep going. And what happened is you get the classic
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
power creep. So what you do is you have the big bad. Once you defeat you have to get powerful enough to defeat the big bad. So the next big bad has to
Yeah.
be more powerful. So then you have to be more powerful to defeat that one. And when you go for 15 seasons, you end up fighting God. Literally,
More than
the
once.
Judeo-Christian
Yeah.
God in the
Yeah.
last season. And they just end it by God going, nah, it's over. And it fades to black. So just first 5 seasons good. It got progressively, and I went through all fit. My wife and I watched all
Other
15
than the
seasons.
last like handful of episodes as they're kind of wrapping everything up at the end of season 15, one of the things that I really liked about Supernatural is that they acknowledged they jumped the shark and they started playing with the format a lot. But yeah. So
Yeah, but it was really good when they were fighting vampires.
right, exactly. When it was Monster of the Week, it was a lot. As soon as like one of the brothers died, and then came back to life, and then one of the brothers was the vessel for Lucifer, and the other brother is the vessel for Michael.
Yeah,
and Michael and Lucifer are constantly stuck in this struggle fighting. I'm like, okay, guys, all right, cool. So we've defeated Lucifer, and we defeated Cain, and now we're fighting. Okay, why are we doing this?
Okay, so now I want to take the other side of that to what is really good world building, which is One Piece.
Yes.
One Piece is an anime. So Ichiro Oda, he is 1,000 episodes in. It is not over, and it has a consistent, very, very tight and well-built world, and it has a consistent storyline. I am nowhere near anywhere that far through it. Matter of fact, they are rebooting it for people like me who can start at the beginning again, because it is literally 1,000. And it depends if you're looking at the manga or if you're looking at the anime, but they're not to the end. And this is a planned not to the end. It's not like they're
Continuing,
just stretching it out. It is a consistent world and storyline going through it, very well constructed. And whenever somebody comes up and says, why is it like this? This isn't consistent. Oda goes, yes, it is. And here's the explanation.
So I want to focus on something that you brought up a minute ago, Chalk. You mentioned the term MacGuffin.
Mhm.
So the MacGuffin is an item, an object that drives the story on. I actually have the example. MacGuffin is an object, device, or event necessary to the plot and the motivation of the characters, but typically unimportant or irrelevant in and of itself. So it doesn't matter. It's not anchored in the setting. In the role playing game setting of Shadowrun, a common inciting incident event is called, and this is in place of the MacGuffin, is called the milk run. In this case, the character does something very everyday and standard, like getting milk from the corner store, and then the MacGuffin event happens. So the milk, we're going on a milk run, has kind of become a little bit of a joke in the role playing world and in the video game world for this exact thing. Hey, go get so and so from Bob. Bob's at the 7-Eleven. You show up at the 7-Eleven, and then all of a sudden there's a robbery or something else goes wrong, and there's a giant shootout. And that becomes the MacGuffin event. The event exists, but only to introduce the characters or the action in a generic enough setting that it doesn't need further explanation. So the reason that it happens in a corner store or in a 7-Eleven or something like that is because the location itself is so ubiquitous in the world and in our world that it doesn't need further contextualization. You just take for granted that gas station convenience stores exist. We all do. Just like an artifact takes up some sort of space, these things lack any anchoring point in the cultures or societies that have created them. When we go to a corner store or a gas station, none of us think about what happened in our culture that led to the gas station existing.
I do.
That's good.
Well, I've thought of it differently. I've always thought that the MacGuffin is the sort of unconnected object that you need.
It can be. It's like when it be
everything you've been written into a corner and you need to get out of it. So they found the artifact that gets them out of the corner. And I always think of that as a MacGuffin.
A lot of times when you're looking at like writing a script, you always look at it's very common at a table in a writing workshop to say what's the MacGuffin here, and that is it's referring to either the object or the inciting incident, either or, and because of that, because the corner store incident essentially ends up being like a Hollywood backdrop in an old movie, it loses. The MacGuffin isn't as identifiable as to like when it's used on a creature or when it's used on an artifact itself. And in those cases, it's easy to create like a connection to the MacGuffin throughout the building of the story. More of, I think, what you're kind of getting at is the Deus Ex Machina, which is the like, oh fuck, we've literally written ourselves into a corner. The machine of the gods has to come down and save us. So so the MacGuffin in, I'm trying to think of like a contemporary example. So the MacGuffin.
Well, here, let me ask you a question. If this is what you would consider the MacGuffin, so I actually sent you a little piece, like an intro to a game I was doing, a little piece of fiction. So the way that I would sometimes do it is, so you take a straight mundane story, relatively mundane. Archaeologists going through the jungle looking for lost temple. For me, that's every day because I've done that on more than one occasion. But then when they find the temple, that's when you get like this twist, and it's actually the home of the avatar of something from the greater outside. And you switch from a pulp adventure story to the real story, which is a horror story.
So whatever event happens, or
which could be opening the tomb, or
that becomes the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is the event, but the MacGuffin doesn't have to be the event. The MacGuffin can also be an object. So
the stele or whatever.
Is this like Smog's treasure in The Hobbit? Gandalf shows up and he's like, hey, let's go on an adventure.
Yeah, so
because everybody's had this old creepy guy that's come up to him and say, Want to go on an adventure?
Yeah, that one.
So the heart of the mountain, the Oath Stone, I think is what it's called. That's the MacGuffin in The Hobbit.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So here's a good example. The Ark in Raiders of the Lost Ark is the MacGuffin. It is the reason for
Okay.
the entire story to exist.
Right.
Indy going into the temple and stealing the gold idol and then having to run away from the rolling ball, that's the milk run.
Ah, okay.
So the milk run goes wrong. The first MacGuffin is the milk run. The milk run goes wrong. We're based in what Indy's going through. We understand a little bit more about his character, and he gets the MacGuffin that he needs so he can lose it, so he can be put on the path to the actual MacGuffin. Now, the Indiana Jones films aren't really known for their Deus Ex Machina solves, but okay. The first three aren't.
Yeah.
A Deus Ex Machina solve would be God, I need, like, I don't know why I can't come up with a really good example, because they're kind of everywhere. A lot of Avengers Endgame. So it's very, very firmly established that no human will be able to survive the Infinity Stones or wearing the Infinity Gauntlet. It is completely established. It's kind of hinted at that Tony might have a solve, but then it's just basically thrust into your face. Oh yeah, Tony Stark made an Iron Man gauntlet that can do it. That's Deus Ex Machina. So they set up this impossible task. No human can use the Infinity Stones. What Thanos did cannot be undone at all. We're fucked, guys. We're going to have to go through this whole adventure to figure it out. And then they're like, oh, just kidding. There's a thing.
Like Dorothy's ruby slippers. And then just at any moment, she can click her heels and now she can go home.
Yeah,
or the Time Turner.
You've had it all
the Time
along.
Turner is another Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
But Harry Potter is full of every single book.
Every book has
film
one.
Has multiple Deus Ex Machina in it. So the same exists, the same stuff that we're talking about for artifacts exists for creatures. It can be very easy or even needed to create a specific creature or encounter for something for the characters to overcome, without ever looking into the greater impact that creature might have on the ecology or culture of a local area. This often leads to creatures that feel disconnected or can seem to only serve some singular purpose. Hell, in some cases, a creature can even be the MacGuffin. In a tabletop setting, there might be dire wolves in an area just to break up the long and disinteresting period of travel. Or think of running around the map in a video game like Final Fantasy. You're just running around in circles until you get that random encounter. Now, random encounters can be anchored in the region, but they're still random. And it doesn't necessarily make sense to fight dire penguins in the middle of the desert. Ultimately, they're creatures that are meant to be easy to pull from, but they're not creatures that serve a world building purpose. On a Warhammer fantasy context, a lot of the traditional role-playing generic creature pitfalls are pretty easy to see. I mean, I just brought up dire wolves and dire penguins. Take a creature, put dire in front of it.
Yeah.
Now you got to fight it. In every fantasy setting. But when it comes to developing Warhammer 40K lore, it can be even easier to fall into these pitfalls. If you want your Space Marine chapter to seem really extra edgy and badass, they have to kill a monster before their initiation. That's your super
flesh
common.
Terrors?
That's all over
with
the place.
Their dinosaur hunting?
Right. How many, or the salamanders and their fire drakes, or the dark angel? Yeah.
Or the space wolves and the thing in the
dark
sea.
angels, and the fact that they have to go kill a monster on Cal, like, it's everywhere.
Yeah,
making up a monster.
So going back to like the old world. So your milk run is finding the cultists.
Well, your milk run is to investigate the weird sightings in the woods.
Right. That turns out to be cultists, but the cultists aren't the big bad.
No, they're just a thing that exists.
They're just a thing that exists to open the gateway for what you really find.
So like in Fallout 4, as an example, the first time Preston Garvey, the guy who constantly lets you know that there's a settlement that needs your help, that often memed character, he lets you know that a settlement is having an issue, and then you show up at the settlement and there's raiders. That's a milk run. It
Mm-hmm.
introduces combat. It introduces a super generic enemy that you're going to face a bunch. And so the same thing, goblins in D&D would be a milk run. Goblins that talk the town.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a milk run, but the joke is, I'm just popping down to the store to get some milk, and then all hell breaks loose.
Oh yeah, the 2000s RPG I was playing, Guild Wars.
Yeah.
There's a whole like little prequel to the day that these the main big bad in the first campaign are called the Char. They're kind of like the I don't know, uh beast people.
Yeah. They're
But
beast men. I know the
yeah,
guys you're talking about. Can
yeah, they're
picture him
like
in my head.
Beastman with trebuchets, and yeah, there's a whole series of just like you going on like these little quests, and some necromancer is like, oh well, you help all the other townspeople. Can you go into the catacombs and go get whatever? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, political upheaval. The beast people take over the kingdom. You
And then they
know,
matter. Then they're no longer something you're just being introduced to. Now they've got
right?
a deeper connection. And
Precisely.
you were saying the flesh terrors, and we brought up a couple of other Space Marine chapters.
Mhm.
It's okay to do something like that because it gives, it's this insurmountable thing. And obviously a bunch of different chapters do it. The trick is not just saying they have to hunt a monster. You need to explain how and why the monsters have either affected the culture or the humans that live in the area.
Mhm.
What is the why behind the ritual? Once you expand the creature's importance, anchoring it at least once, it becomes more invested and valuable as more than just background static. A great example of this is Grogu from The Mandalorian. He was a
Oh.
random creature. Not only was he a random creature, but he was the
Yeah.
MacGuffin of season 1.
Mhm.
But as he moved through the series, they constantly addressed why he was important to the world and what he meant. He was no longer just this little cute thing that Mando had to take around. He became more invested in the background of the world and the background of the culture. So, with that in mind, just like we looked at things when we talked about world building history, a great way to anchor an artifact or creature is to connect it to your world in more than one way. So, Chalk, you had just brought up the idea, and I want you to get a little bit deeper into it as we move forward. But you archaeologist moving through the jungle comes across this ruin, and then there's some inciting incident or something that happens, an artifact is discovered, some anchor into this culture happens. And I often find it easiest to ground my development with the use of writing prompts, just like the history episodes where I introduced a bunch of different writing prompts. All of these prompts are only meant to generate like a sentence or two. You're not going to don't worry about writing a 15-page manifesto for every artifact you come up with or every creature you come up with. You just have to connect it a couple of times to different things in your world to make it feel real. And when I come up with artifacts, I always look for their connections to culture, economy, geography, general use, and any sort of historical impact. So those are the 5 points: culture, economy, geography, general use, and historical impact. As an example, when developing a magical sword, culture becomes a cue for its form and function, helping to define it as a standard military equipment, like something such as a gladius or longsword, or does it fit more of a social and ceremonial purpose, like a rapier?
Mhm.
This even helps to lead into the economic prompt. A gladius was often provided by the Roman Empire to its soldiers and therefore would not have a significant impact on the money that the soldiers earned. Think of it like the las gun to a guardsman. They're printed in excess and they're just given out. It also lets you know that they're both weapons of war, which suggests economy and political connections exist as well. A rapier, on the other hand, has a more social and even ritualistic purpose, often being associated with dueling and the aristocracy. This suggests that a greater economic impact on the person who owned it, even suggesting how robust the economy for the time was. If you have an aristocracy that can compete in things like ritualistic dueling to pass time, you probably have too much money that isn't being put into your civilization or the people who aren't aristocrats. When weapons become a social status accessory, it also suggests things about the current political climate, which I just hinted at. The geographical impact could also be linked to the economy. Where iron was more abundant, we saw a development of short and long swords and layered armor up to full plate. Where on an island nation of Japan, as an example, we saw the development of the katana that was used against silk and leather armor. I'm going to stop the katana versus longsword argument dead in its tracks before it starts. They were both the pinnacle of military technology for their geographical location. They were developed to be used in completely different circumstances. A longsword had to be tougher and more resilient as it clashed against other iron objects. A katana had to be sharp to cut through leather and layered silk. A katana also had to be a little softer because it had to be sharpened more often. Could a katana cut a longsword in half? Absolutely not. But do you want to know what could cut a longsword in half? Damascus steel weapons that the Vikings carried. The blades of the Vikings had been made by trading for iron that was specific from the Middle East. And we don't know how Middle East Damascus steel is made. If you own a Damascus steel knife or sword, I hate to tell you, it's cable pattern steel. It looks really cool. I love calling it Damascus. We currently, in the modern era, have no idea how Damascus, specifically in the Middle East, made Damascus steel. It is lost to history. However, because it was a better steel, it could shatter or cut through Western European weapons. However, you're still talking about a short sword or a long sword. You're not talking about the mystical katana. General use is one of the easier things in everything I went down to get across and talk about. Um, you know, is it used in war? Was it provided by the state? Is it a social status? Is it something that, like a rapier, social status, money, vanity piece, gladius, something I just have to carry for part of my job? Historical impact can be how old the weapon is. Did it come from the Bronze Age, meaning it isn't even steel? That's another way to balance the artifact, place the artifact into a specific age: stone, bronze, steel, industrial. And then we get into the artifacts that Chac probably knows about, where the shape of the weapon is more made to serve a very specific ceremonial purpose. These would be weapons that might be made, or artifacts that might be made out of things like gold, jade, or obsidian, things that aren't used in war. And this all kind of leads to the capital A artifact weapon. You're looking at the Wyvern killer of Great Mustafar. This is a named capital A weapon. But don't forget, artifacts don't have to be capital A artifacts. Pottery shards, old scrolls, and even clothing from an older time are all considered artifacts, which can all be introduced into your world building to ground the cultures that exist now and explain where things came from.
Well, let me jump in on that. So, as an archaeologist, we create stories. The stories that we create, you would call history. But it's the same sort of thing. I'm doing world building. I'm building a world looking at the artifacts of the people that the people left behind. So there are a couple of different fields of anthropology. Anthropology is just the study of people. Okay. Now, cultural anthropology, you look at people who are living, you look at cultures mainly who are still extant, or you look at the writings and all that sort of thing. And so you're more getting at the story of a people told by those people. Okay. Physical anthropology is we look at humans as animals, and we look at evolution, and we look to see how the human animal got to where we are today. And I can talk about things like osteology and forensic science and all that sort of thing, because basically an archaeologist is just a forensic scientist. It's just the crime we're looking at is quite a bit older.
The crime is history.
And I have looked at actual crime scenes.
Right.
That happen to be 1,000 years old. But what archaeologists do is we look at the artifacts people have left behind. And the artifact, and this goes just to world building, is everything that is created, used, or moved by people. So you could have a granite block in the middle of a limestone plain. Well, it didn't just, that granite stone didn't just like appear there. Somebody brought it. It's an
Right.
artifact. The interstate highway system was built by humans.
Yeah.
That's an artifact. A single pottery sherd is an artifact. And I have actually found a single pottery sherd that was out of place and suggested a connection between two peoples that we didn't really know happened at that time. And people ask, what is the most amazing artifact you've ever found? And I can literally say it was a broken piece of pottery.
Yeah. And that's like the big difference between, like,
for me.
when we talk about world building, a lot of times there's a tendency to focus on the exciting parts, and the exciting parts being the wars
Yes.
and the histories, and how, and I shouldn't even say the histories, the wars. How did the wars lead to here? And the truth is, history itself and using artifacts to tell history is much deeper, because it gets into these, how did these cultures why did these cultures interact? What's the reason that this stuff happened?
And so, because if you're doing a role-playing game as opposed to a straight-up battle like 40K or Age of Sigmar, the little things matter a lot. Because if you're actually doing a setting with world building, those mundane things ground the world much better than the super big magical artifact. Take another shonen, another anime that I'm watching right now. I know, got to do this, but I'm just doing this for Emmy. Okay, I'm just doing this for Emmy.
Thank you.
I am right now watching Delicious Dungeon.
Me too. I love Delicious in Dungeon.
So, Delicious Dungeon talks about it's a dungeon crawler with the adventurer party going down, but deals a lot in the ecology of a dungeon. What lives there, why it lives there, what they eat, what they hunt, and also how best to cook them and what tastes delicious.
Yes.
But they talk a lot about, why does this plant-based monster live here? What is it eating? How does it... So they've, in one of the earlier episodes, there is a vine monster, and they talk about, well, what the vine monster does is it lures you in with these fruits, and then it wraps you up in these tentacles. And one of the characters says, and then it eats you. And we go, no, it doesn't eat you. It waits until you die, and then it uses you as fertilizer. And so they start building this whole ecology around the monsters that live within the dungeon. So it's actually, I'm like 9 episodes in, so I'm not very far in.
Me neither.
But it's a pretty good example of world building around a very weird place, because they're literally they're in a dungeon going down through like a buried
It's like
tower.
And there's less and less vegetation as they keep going down. And so they have to explain, how are things continuing to be edible on all of these levels?
Right.
And then you find these, like, for example, in a recent episode I watched, there are these like trolls, and the trolls have the ability, the little guy, the dwarf guy with the horns here, he's sort of like he's a bit of an enigmatic character with origins that are kind of dubious, and like little slivers of his past are lived each time, there's another episode, and they kind of keep him around because he's good at cooking and they don't ask a lot of questions. But this guy is kind of almost like a custodian to the creatures further and further on the levels, and you find out he's been planting seeds in the back of these troll things.
Yes.
So that's how they're able to have fresh fruits and vegetables. And the whole thing is, there's only food and markets on the surface, and they have to get to the bottom of the dungeon because our sort of blonde cis white guy paladin character on the right there, his sister has been eaten by
Captured.
a dragon on one
Aha.
of the lower levels, and they've got to get down there before that dragon digests. And so they're trying to get to the bottom of this dungeon. And as you go on, too, it's sort of revealed more about like, why is there this dungeon? Why are people adventuring here? And it's sort of,
Right.
it's almost like one of those like video game isekai things where it's revealed that there's somebody who kind of like created all of these levels, and
Okay.
whoever does get to the bottom, you know, kind of wins the whole thing. If you're familiar with Ready Player One, it's
Yeah.
almost like that whole thing, like, can you get the egg? Can you
Uh,
get on the leaderboard? Can you
Mhm.
solve my like Halliday puzzle and win the internet kind of thing?
yeah.
But my point is that they actually have they show it shows an interaction between the
Hmm.
monsters, and it shows the ecology.
Right.
Right.
And when you show that in world building, like if you flesh out the tavern and the town that the adventurers always go out of, it grounds them in the world much
Yeah, they're
better.
part of
Hmm.
the economy. They're part of the culture. They become a fixture that matters. It's not just blowing through town. And there's going to be towns you're just going to blow through.
Right. But like one of the things that's been getting me, and I think you were showing pictures of what looked like a Tarrasque there from D&D, big world-ending apocalypse monster.
Oh yeah, we'll
Hmm.
we'll hit monsters here in a couple minutes.
But what I just want to point out, and I've been seeing this on social media, I think it was on TikTok or maybe it was on Instagram. People were saying, well, the Tarrasque, which is a level 20 apocalypse beast, is covered in defensive spikes.
Right.
Why does this world ending apocalypse beast need defensive spikes?
Hmm.
That just means there's something bigger and badder than it out there. And of course, the spikes were just put on because spikes are cool.
Yeah, yeah. Literally an artist was like spikes are neat.
Spikes are
Have you
cool.
ever heard of the Cult of the Tarrasque? It was a Dungeons and Dragons third edition, 3.5, 3.5 edition, like storyline module. And essentially there was a cult that followed the Tarrasque. And the deeper you got into the cult, the more Tarrasque you became. And
Hmm.
when the Tarrasque was killed, who was ever at the top of the cult, whoever had essentially like been morphed enough by following the cult, became the new Tarrasque. But it would take a
Yeah.
certain amount of time to become the giant monster, essentially. So you'd start
Mm.
off as like a baby Tarrasque. So the reason that there's always a Tarrasque is because there's always something that's ready to turn into the new one, which was just kind of a cool thing. But to put my money where my mouth is, as an example of how I've used this in fantasy artifact building, here's one of the first items I created for the world of Galdor, the Blood Sword of St. Augustine. So culturally, the Church of St. Augustine is based loosely on the deconstructed model of the Jesuit priesthood from Catholicism, with a very heavy sprinkling of demonology and exorcism, because fantasy setting, so there has to be demons. From an economic standpoint, initiates who are on the path to follow St. Augustine are required to give up all of their worldly possessions when they swear to the church. So if a paladin or a knight arrives and says, I'm going to become a knight of St. Augustine, the horse, the armor, the weapons, the money, the food that they are sent with by their parents immediately becomes property of the church. They
Hmm.
use all of these items to support the supplicants who have given everything up. So this means there's a mix of fancier equipment and very old hand-me-down equipment, because just as much as a knight might roll in and join, there's going to be soldiers off the battlefield who join, who have a spear, an old rusty spear, a really, really shitty shield, and maybe some broken chainmail. Well, much like in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, St. Augustine's blade is a very, very simple thing. The blood sword is very simple. It's not ornate. There's nothing, if it's on a wall, you can't tell what the blood sword is because of the type of artifact it is. It's not carved with runes. It doesn't glow in the dark when orcs are near. There's nothing like that. St. Augustine is a god of war, and those sworn to his order are tasked with protecting not only his holy places, but the walls, roadways, and other major civil institutions of a city or large town. This is continued to reflect on the the initiates and the low-level followers have access to, even in some cases being reclaimed military gear probably taken from the battlefield. So these are nothing about the way that I've grounded this artifact. It's that idea. It's that scene from The Last Crusade when the guy drinks from the wrong cup. Geographically, the church was founded in the Middlelands area, so that just means a temperate zone with lots of grasslands. It's also an object from the earliest known recordings of the Iron Age. So legend suggests that it was one of St. Augustine's personal weapons, and it's an early example of a standard party military weapon, in this case, a hand-and-a-half bastard sword. It comes from a Conan-ish timeline, so to speak. In general, its use was in warfare, but the historical impacts is that there are legends that since it was a god's weapon before he became a god, when he was still mortal, he not only used it in combat, but he would have used it to defeat greater outsiders or demons with the blade itself. All of this combined into a singular rare artifact and powerful weapon that can be found in the world. Something that can be tracked down through gameplay to either be used to banish an outsider or used in normal combat. However, since it's a named artifact, it's got a couple of other things, unique features, one of which being it can specifically be used to unlock a tomb. And it's like a reverse sword in the stone. You put it into the stone, you can get into the tomb, you can't pull the sword back out. So I did a lot of work through answering these questions to connect all of them together. And even as I answered different questions, even as I gave the 1 or 2 sentence examples, they even linked into one another. And that's what you're doing. You're creating a web where all of the impact statements, all of the prompts cross each other.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have some 40K examples you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, we could talk about the Carcharodon's Astra here. Kind of like not in the current way that they're portrayed as kind of like Maori Pacific Islander people, but kind of the way that they're portrayed as having this very like antiquated, almost 30K era armor. They speak in High Gothic. They're kind of like this living anachronism, but also kind of like barnacle encrusted. Like, of course, that's very cool optics. That's really fun. But the lore, being that these space sharks are kind of these outcast space marines. I know that you guys think that the hero space marines are boring, but I will posit that the Carcharodon's Astra are kind of cool. They have kind of lost contact with the other space marines. They have very antiquated armor, antiquated weapons. However, they are incredibly feared in battle. But there is a reason why they've kind of been in perpetual exile,
Yeah.
kind of patrolling with no home for a really long time. But the fact that their optics and their antiquated armor language and everything, there is a story and they are able to do some visual storytelling with them. Also, Tiberos, he's
The
like
Red
a
Wake.
chapter master. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's huge. He has double chain swords. He's one of the strongest marines around. Oh my gosh. And now for the life of me, I cannot remember, but there is some really cool origin story. Like, not many space marines, even, the Adeptus Astartes, who are like strong with transhuman physiology, nobody can wield a double chain sword. But somehow, Tiberos, what is that origin story as to why Tiberos has the double chain sword?
Yeah. Well, and
I remember saying, well, obviously he's a Primarch.
Obviously,
But,
he has to be. He's huge.
my favorite boy is the Ashen Claws. My Space Marine chapter is
Mhm.
very much they're exiled. They're a chapter. They were 10th chapter Raven Guard, and they just left,
Mhm.
and they still exist now. That the chapter has continued to exist, but they're not good guys. They're not bad guys. They exist in their own fiefdom. They trade with the Carcharodons a lot, and they've got that same thing. It's a lot of old armor, and yeah, I really like, that's the flavor of Space Marine that I get excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I like going back to the Badab War and stuff like that. I liked it when we had renegades and all, and we just didn't have nice boys and spiky boys.
Yeah, when there was nuance to the story.
Yeah. So one of their sword and the artifacts, and where I could see you could actually do a world building story around was it there? Is it the salamanders where they're going after Vulcan's
Yes.
artifacts, and if they find all 4 of them or all
It's supposed
5
to
of
bring
them,
Vulcan
he
back.
won't return until they're all reunited or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
That seems to be, it's sort of like you have the sword that unlocks the tomb and gets locked inside and all that. But this is a search for the artifacts that will bring back their Primarch, who we know is alive because
he's a perpetual.
he can't die. He's a perpetual, and he can fall from orbit and be obliterated with an atomic weapon, and he'll still come back.
Spoilers.
That's not a spoiler. That's in all the books.
I know.
But
I just had to throw it there.
So there you have the search for the artifacts. And actually, that story, I think, is very much not a Space Marine story. That's a story about I forget what his what the guy.
Yeah, you're focusing on a specific character and his journey through the world, which is always more exciting than
unless it's from the Ultramarines omnibus and we're following what's his name, which was just I couldn't handle that. I tried to reread it. I liked when it first came out. I read it. I'm like, oh, cool. Now I tried to reread it. I'm like,
trying to pronounce Ultramarine names just drives me nuts.
I like Marnius Calgar. I think he's a cool character.
They've done a lot to fix him recently. A lot of the I'll definitely say that one of the nice things about being involved with Warhammer 40K is that even as we're bringing up things that we're kind of complaining about, 40K and games where they're always improving little by little. It's always getting better.
Yeah. So who was the guy that was in the omnibus? Who was Sergeant? He was disgraced, and then he had to go to the Chaos World. And then we got the wonderful description of the demon,
Demon Kalaba,
stretching the skins. The Demon Kalaba, where they're stretching the skins on fat people so they can harvest it and fit it over.
Uriel Ventress.
Yeah, the really gross stuff.
Yeah.
It was like, that whole storyline was unnecessary.
Ugh, just absolute basement dwellers, all of them.
Well, you got to throw some fresh meat to the inside.
Oh, God, I know.
I hope that did not. Actually, I hope we don't have any of those people following the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm perfectly fine with that.
It's like I make a lot of negative Scientology comments too. I'm pretty sure no Scientologists listen. So
actually, I have to think about going back, and I've got all these Space Marine models. I always start some. I've got like maybe some Raptors, maybe something else, but Carcharodons, they just take a lot of kit back.
They really do. And so do the Ashen Claws, because you've got to get back to that like old armor style. And there isn't a kit for that older armor style.
You just buy Horse Heresy.
Kind of.
Put some beaks on them.
Kind of. So when it comes to the more mundane artifacts, because that is something that's important, Chac brought up, it's kind of how we know about cultures. As an example of St. Augustine, when I designed the gods for the world, I pulled apart lots of Greek and Roman religious aspects. While most cities or large towns may not have a full temple, most places where populations have gathered have shrines and thanes. These are smaller nook-sized representations of temples. So like when you enter somebody's house, if they follow St. Augustine, they may just have a shrine. Think like an apple crate sized shrine to St. Augustine. And these contain representations of St. Augustine and his two demigods. So you would have a boar, a panther, and a human in armor that were all very roughly carved out of specifically hard wood. It has to be carved out of hard wood, and it's these three objects. And these are considered more like living artifacts, as the practice of carving them is still happening. So people are still carving these artifacts, and they are these representations of the god, and they're still leaving them in their active shrines. But there's also places in the world where they've seen these artifacts. They can go back. Oh, these are carvings of the god from 1,000 years ago. This is a religious practice that is carried into the future. And based on looking at, I imagine, Chac, correct me if I'm wrong, But based on looking at where those artifacts came from, you can tell the storytelling part, the investigation part, the crime scene, as you mentioned, is going back and rebuilding. Okay, well, how is this ancient civilization that worshipped the same god we worship now different from ours? And what does that suggest? And then you can even move forward, because if you move forward into a modern or science fiction setting like 40K, you can go back to things like this. These artifacts that I created, the pottery shards, coins, there's a name, idols. That's what, when you carve little representations, idols. These are all little things that you can sprinkle into your 40K setting that suggest the people that may have lived on the planet before compliance happened. If I were to take Galdor and move it into a compliance era 40K setting, first off, some really horrible shit would happen, because like 85% of the entire population would have to die because they're not human. But then there would be all these artifacts and all of these things left behind, including giant dinosaur bones, which we'll get into in a second, that the archaeo savants and the mechanicus would use to kind of piece back, okay, what was this history? Why did this history exist?
Yeah. If I did a actual 40K game, like designed one, it would be much more in the fantasy flight type of play, where it would be maybe still bring in elements of skirmish games.
But you're looking more at
but
small bands of characters.
Small bands of characters with probably a game master, and you're playing against the game master, and you are playing one or two characters. Maybe you have, so it would be more of a traditional role-playing game, but with elements of combat-oriented. I mean, all role-playing games have some sort of combat orientation, but sort of like taking Necromunda or Kill Team and translating that more to a role-playing
right, like Confrontation, old Necromunda.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know about Inquisitor. I never played that game. That was a big game. What was that, like 56 millimeter?
54
or something
millimeter.
like that. 54 millimeter. I don't know how that played. Somebody's doing a 6 millimeter Inquisition.
Yeah, I saw that recently. So we definitely have, not to cut you off here, Chac.
No, go ahead.
We definitely have, we wanted to do ancient artifacts and legendary creatures. And I think we definitely got through our artifact side of it. We definitely have, I think, a whole other episode here on creatures, bouncing a little bit more off of our paleontologists. So if I can get you guys back,
we can talk
episode,
all about some Magic the Gathering creatures.
I would love to do. Let's do it again from a creature side. Are you guys both down for that idea? I don't want to drag us into a 3-hour episode.
God, no. I see we've been going for quite some time.
We have.
It is late.
It's almost 3 hours now. My wife's about to come home. I just got a DoorDash notification, so she's ordered dinner. We're having Indian. So
there you go.
Ooh,
now you
that
know.
sounds good.
So that will, I guess, wrap it up for part 1 on world building artifacts and legendary creatures. We will be back with a part 2 where we will get into just the creature side of it, or a little bit more into the creature side of it, and obviously the artifacts that come from the creatures, like bones and stuff like that, which are also essentially artifacts, right, guys? I'm correct in saying that the bones and fossils?
Yeah, if they are, so bones and fossils are artifacts if they're utilized.
Okay.
Okay.
By people, which a lot of them are. I've got lots of examples of bone artifacts from creatures.
Okay.
And, of course, one of the leading things, and Emmy might know more about this, is supposedly one of the ideas that where dragons come from, one being that's just an ancestral memory of like scary lizards, because every culture has them, but they might have arisen out of seeing fossilized dinosaurs, especially like in China, in the what's that area in China that they have all the dinosaurs eroding out of the cliffs?
That's in Mongolia. It's called the Flaming Cliffs. And I would say it's more of we can definitely confirm and trace back the myth of the griffin to a specific dinosaur fossil eroding out of the flaming cliffs. It's called the Protoceratops. It's really cute. It's one of those ceratopsian dinosaurs that's got the little beak and the frill like a triceratops.
Okay, cool.
But people saw those eroding out of the cliffside in the Flaming Cliffs of Mongolia, and it's got like the body of a lion, but like the head and the beak of a bird, and that's where we get the idea of a griffin.
Got it.
Is from
Interesting.
the is he's an adorable little guy, the
I was just
Protoceratops.
pulling up pictures of it.
Yeah, it's a smaller dinosaur. It's not a big dinosaur, which is why the griffin are always kind of shown as like a large dog sized
Yeah, I absolutely love
creature.
griff hounds. Like the whole idea of a griff hound
Yeah,
always makes me
it's like a
super happy.
griffhound, but yeah, Protoceratops is the dinosaur that they were doing some drawings of, and that they were
It
positing
spawned a
what
whole
that
thing.
might have looked like with some skin and some epithelial tissue and
2 to 2.5 meters.
Very cool.
yeah,
Only
little
about
guys.
200 pounds.
So I
Yeah.
think it's when you guys brought up dungeon dining.
Delicious
Yeah,
in Dungeon.
Delicious
It's on
Dungeon.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually pretty good.
You guys were talking about like different creatures that did stuff, and that there's a tree in Shaiish that exists. I can't remember. It's got a really weird name, but essentially the tree like entraps you
hmm
and cuts you a bunch. Like the brambles cut you a bunch, and the point is that your blood starts to seep down, and that awakens the tree roots, and then the tree roots wrap around you and hold you in place. And then the bats come down and feed on you. And then your body, what's left, is left specifically for the tree to use as nutrients going forward. Like there's an entire cycle around like haunted zombie trees. I'll
Oh
do a
yeah,
little bit
Nurgle's
more.
got those too.
Yeah.
The feculent gnarlmaw tree. It also
Well, that one
there's a
actually eats you, right? Like
yeah, that one eats you.
this is more like your dead body nourishes every other creature, and then your bones nourish the tree.
Well, the sort of the famous example of that sort of symbiotic relationship is the acacia tree, and there are ones in Central America too, and the ants. So
Okay.
the ants live in the acacia tree. They've evolved so that they can only eat the sap
Of the
from
acacia
the
tree.
acacia tree. If the acacia tree dies, the ant colony dies too. But
Interesting.
the thing is, if you disturb the tree, they
The ants
attack
attack
you.
you.
So the ants they live in the hollow thorns, and they're the defense mechanism for the tree. And in return, the tree feeds them.
That's cool. Yeah, so we definitely have. There's a whole other. we
Yes.
just talked about weird trees. So, Emmy, how can people find the cool projects that you're working on and find you around the internet?
My @ is coral pecan, like the animal and the nut. And that is on Instagram, primarily TikTok, but also Instagram, YouTube, and when I remember that it's a platform, Threads by Meta on there as well. You can also find me on my podcast, Wooberg Radio, which is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean.
You guys are on Apple and Spotify now. A week has
We
gone
are.
by.
Yeah, we're so professional.
Awesome.
If you would like to learn about the lore and mechanics of Magic the Gathering, that is where you can find that.
Very cool. Chac, how about you? Where can people find you about the internet? What
They
projects are
can
you
find
involved
me
in?
at Chacbalam, Chacbalam, which basically means Thunder Jaguar, or the God of Thunder, the Maya God of Thunder. I'm primarily on TikTok. I'm also on YouTube. I keep searching for stuff I'm interested in on YouTube, and I keep on going, oh, this is cool. Oh, that's me. Because I have a very specific, very small interest in some of this
you
stuff.
are your demographic.
I am my demographic. There are a couple of others of us out there. I'm primarily on TikTok. I've sort of fallen away from something. I have to do some more. TikTok, you will see me talking about not just hobby stuff, but also anthropology, archaeology, and some gender stuff as well.
What bones to lick in what order?
What bones to lick? I have my internet fame. My one bit of I went viral because I got over a million likes and views on one video was on the number of ribs on between men and women. Spoiler: you have the same number of ribs. Doesn't matter that Eve was made from the rib of Adam. Both men and women have 12 sets of ribs.
There was I heard some like greater breakdown of what the term the rib of Adam actually meant.
There are a lot of people that come up with a bunch of things. There are a couple of biblical scholars.
This was a comedian.
A comedian, so it's not
It
real.
was funny. It was good and funny, but
yeah. But I'm also on Instagram. I don't use Threads because I've never really figured out Threads. And
I've posted like
same.
6 times.
Yeah,
and
same.
Twitter, and I refuse to call it X, but so
It's a
still
cesspit.
Twitter.
It's an absolute
Yeah, it really is.
cesspit.
I have no reason to go there. But yeah, primarily on TikTok. Instagram have some pictures. Instagram has a lot of pictures of me traveling like around England and all. So it's more personal. You get like Disney and England and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're going to see my cat if you follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, you get my dogs and all that.
Yeah.
But most of my commentary is on TikTok, and I'd like to move more of it to YouTube, but I'm lazy.
And of course, both of these fine people can be found on our Discord. You can at them with the information they just gave you. The other thing that you can do is if we inspired you at all talking about weird artifacts or any of the weird stuff that we talked about today, you can shoot us that information or ask us questions about the show. Best way to do that is through email at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com. Of course, as I just mentioned, you can also join our community on Discord. Over there, we talk about the lore, hobby, and tactics of Warhammer 40K. It's a great way to get involved in some of our collaborative lore building projects. Plus, we have channels dedicated to all sorts of other weird and nerdy topics. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, or you can find some more information at our website, underthehiveofmadness.com. Please take a moment to help the podcast grow by liking and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast fix. Our home is right here on Spotify, but you can find us on Audible, Apple Podcasts, CastBox, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, and more. As we mentioned up top, you can help us grow through support on Patreon. You can join awesome patrons like Andrew Q, Big Mullins, and Honkerim by supporting us for $3, $6, or $9 at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. You'll get a shout out in the credits like you just heard, and also join in a chance to snag some cool merch in our monthly giveaways, plus that video podcast that I talked about. Mm-hmm. Spelling and links to everything, including these guys' content, will be in the show notes. Bulge's Sump Rack City, your best source for all things dripping in synth leather fashion, metal-studded deathcore, and the neon glow of the synth punk rebellion. If you can't wear a squig-high body glove, what can you wear? Always one step ahead of the Administratum, we are the ultimate sound of rebellion on the Pirate Voxwave 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Reminding all of you Chemrats, Hive Mice, and Sump Ghoulies to keep those dials fixed right here. Same ratty frequency for a dose of the same ratty-ass attitude.
In the Vale of Night where terror brews, 4-armed emperors draped in sinister hues. Their grasp brings despair, beware their ruse. That was very Allen Ginsberg-y.
I'm trying.
Not really. He was more of a free verse guy. I'm thinking of the other one, the other beat poet.
You don't like my 4-armed emperor slam poetry?
I like it, but it needs to be a little bit more, I don't know.
I'm not good at writing. I'm trying.
Okay. No, it's pretty good stuff.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.